A very good morning, educators, and a warm welcome to this close session presented by SAR Education, where we explore transformative approaches to learning. I'm Gitika Sharma, your moderator for today, and I'm privileged to facilitate this session with an education pioneer. Before we begin, let's quickly review our session norms. Please keep your microphones on mute unless you are invited to speak. We do encourage you to keep your camera on so the session is more engaging and participative. Feel free to use the chat box to share your comments, thoughts, and questions in the chat box related to the session going on. We will have a question and answer segment at the end of the session. So do note down your questions. If you face any technical issue, just ping in the chat box and we are here to help you. Apart from that, please keep your jotters with you so that you can jot down the points of the session. Now we are deeply honored to welcome Faye Berryman, a pioneering educator and co-founder of Fitzroy Community School, joining us from Australia. For 50 plus years, she has transformed literacy education, developing the renowned Fitzroy Readers Phonics method that empowered countless children worldwide. Her work blends research driven pedagogy with character building community methods. And now, today's session is on Inside Fitzroy Community School, cultivating character, confidence, and curiosity. Discover why alternative schools thrive and how daily structures shape confident and curious learners. A warm glow welcome to Faye.
Thank you. Thank you for your share. Right. See, okay. Is it, I think? So continue to share. Right. Now, is that right? Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Oh, good. Well, um, good morning, everybody. I am, as you just heard, Faye Berryman, co-founder in 1976 of the Fitzroy Community School in Melbourne. I'm delighted to be part of this forum where all present are dedicated to teaching well. Today, my aim is to tell you a little of Fitzroy Community School and to give you some insight into how we achieve our mission of cultivating character, curiosity, and confidence in learners. This is a picture of our school in inner city Melbourne. Teachers face big questions today. How to raise children in our care well? What does well mean? And are our school environments achieving this? These are the same questions that came to the fore in force in the 1970s. The 70s were years when many traditional values and ways of doing things were questioned. Education was in the thick of this debate. Two pillars of education were being challenged: that the existing, long accepted school model was the only one possible, and that it was satisfactory. In many education circles, the prevailing thinking was that for both personal and societal reasons, a different and better sort of schooling was needed. This was true whether schooling was considered as a time of life that is valid in its own right or as a preparation for the future. Traditional schools were greatly failing many students. Inside school walls were lots of unhappy and demoralized children. They were simply serving time. It was alarming to notice that some children could persist for 10 or more years in the classroom and still not gain proficiency in the formal skills of reading and writing. Many young people were emerging from our education system ill-prepared for adult life, whether judged by emotional or intellectual standards. At this time, new child-raising beliefs were emerging. In the early 70s, I was part of many of these discussion groups. Now, I'll go right back now from the 70s to 1950. I was a student in a humble school in a very small, tiny Australian town. I was 7 years old. I had Mr. Kevin Ryan as a teacher. He was the teacher who has most influenced my life. You can see from the photos that the influence of a teacher has nothing to do with grand locations. And I think this is an important fact for us all to understand. Mr. Ryan treated every student with respect. I realize now that he saw each student as someone unique. He listened to our ideas and he encouraged them. He valued reflection. He believed that encouraging us to read and to think was his main job. His classroom was a safe haven, always free from negativity. So, Mr. Kevin Ryan gave us different books to read. Now, one of these was Enid Blyton's The Naughtiest Girl in the School. And this is, in fact, the copy that he gave to me. It was sometime in the early 50s. At Whiteleaf School, the naughtiest girls' school, the students were seen as rational and problem solvers. Students there developed a sense of agency because they were given opportunities for input into how the school would run and given opportunities to help sort out behavioral, emotional, and moral issues that arose amongst the children. I think this book is a classic. I understand now that the seed of Fitzroy Community School was sown in the 1950s. The questioning era of the 1970s allowed the seed to germinate. In preparing for this presentation, I reread many major texts. A.S. Neill's Summerhill, Ivan Illich's D-School Society, O'Carroll and Berryman, Start Your Own School, Faye Berryman, Fitzroy Community School, Dr. Seuss, Hooray for Diffin Doofer Day, and Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go. No doubt you all know about Dr. Seuss, even if you don't know the other writers. In these very different texts, all writers give emphasis to the important role teachers play in teaching children to think. This is so different from the role of simply feeding the children facts. Looking at Dr. Seuss and Hooray for Diffin Doofer Day, these are the words of Miss Bonkers. We've taught you that the earth is round, that red and white make pink, and something else that matters more. We've taught you how to think. A.S. Neill is hard-hitting. In his work, he says, and I quote, this, if we're just teaching the student fact, he says, we are stealing from the child the joy of life, the joy of discovery, the joy of overcoming an obstacle. I say in our book, our idea was a lifestyle or culture that would enrich and develop the mind of the children so that they would emerge after 13 years of schooling as confident and ethical young people who were independent thinkers. Ivan Illich says of traditional schooling, the pupil is schooled to confuse teaching with learning. In the 1970s, more teachers began thinking about what they wanted the outcome of 13 years in the classroom to achieve for their students. Because of this debate, education has definitely advanced for the better. Um, Because, yes, so education, it became more child-centered. Some educators, influenced by A.S. Neill's alternative school, Summerhill in England, started their own school, as we did. However, the influence these writers had on education generally went far beyond the few schools that were inspired to start. In fact, only 3 years ago, I attended an afternoon tea at Presbyterian Ladies' College, which is one of the large, prestigious independent schools in Melbourne. It was interesting that during her address, the principal acknowledged the influence that A.S. Neill had had on her burgeoning ideas as a young teacher. This is not a one-off. Many of my teacher friends acknowledge the stimulus to their thought provided by Neill's iconic text. In an exam-driven world, I think it is once again important for us teachers to think about our role, about how we are educating young people for their future in an ever-changing world. Now, my topic today, and it is a big one, is cultivating character, confidence, and curiosity in learners. In 1980, in our book, Start Your Own School, we said, and I quote, we, that is adults, devote a lot of attention to adult politics, trying to create a better world. But every reform is frustrated or perverted. The quality of life is not improved because people are the same. What changes people? Well, any adult can recuperate from their childhood if they are determined enough, but the population will generally behave according to its upbringing. How, and this is important for us, how you raise a person has a more potent effect on their ability to achieve happiness than any other influence or circumstance. That excerpt is now reprinted in my book, Fitzroy Community School. So let me tell you something of the background to Fitzroy Community School, and then we'll go on to our mission, which is cultivating character, curiosity, and confidence in young learners. This is 1965. In 1965, I began my first year as a secondary teacher. I was excited to be at last putting into practice the academic learning of the last few years. I was conscious of the big responsibility teachers had, and I was determined to be the best teacher I possibly could be, to inspire teachers to think, children to think, and to love learning. I was full of high ideals. Now, what a rude awakening this was. In spite of my best efforts, I knew that my influence with some students would be superficial. I remember my first class. I was teaching English, the subject I love. The class had 40 students. How could I possibly cater for all levels when some students could barely write a sentence and others were highly literate? Actually, a more serious issue was that the less able students by this time had low self-esteem and sometimes the belief that they could not succeed. Often there would be behavior issues with the underachieving students. Unacceptable behavior is much easier to correct when children are 5 than when when they're 13. There was no teacher support in the classroom those days. I did my best. I tried to encourage all students. Towards the end of that year, I was a passenger in a very serious car accident. For the next 2 years, I was in and out of hospitals. This allowed me many hours for reflection. I knew that I loved teaching. I thought that it was possibly the most important profession there is. But I understood now The teaching at the secondary level meant that there were some negative issues that I or others in my position were going to be unable to remedy. I realised then that the best teachers and tools were required in primary education. This, I felt, would contribute enormously to the academic and emotional success of students. However, at this point, I never considered primary teaching as a profession, so when I was well enough, I returned to university for further study. Now, the 1970s dawned. I was a young mother with young children. It seemed that everyone was discussing child raising practice and education. The question on everyone's lips was, did the conventional schooling model that everyone had long accepted support the newly awakened beliefs in how best to raise a child? The answer was a resounding no. Beyond school, and even at school, too many people were living in discord, on drugs, anxious, alienated, unhappy. Even in the schools with better facilities or schools with more dedicated teachers, the deep-seated problems of schooling were not being addressed. A significant body of thought was insisting that we needed to rethink what was happening in our schools. Ivan Illich's forceful work, Deschooling Society, coined the incisive phrase, the hidden curriculum. By this, Illich meant the formative influences that are embedded within the structure and lifestyle of the school, but that are usually ignored because they're not part of the official curriculum. This concept sounded alarm bells. Until the 70s, the hidden curriculum, the formative aspect of school structure, had been ignored. In the prevailing climate, it is little wonder that those who were able to decided to start their own alternative schools. Parents and educators could see that there were many things wrong with the traditional model of schooling. Indeed, to a proportion of educators in the 1970s, it was a raising emergency. So, with enthusiasm, high ideals, and aspirations, a number of alternative schools started. The sad fact is that after a short time, only a few of these schools survived. Why? Surprisingly, the demise of the new schools was because parents could not reach agreement on what they considered important. Parents were always well-intentioned, but it became apparent that even when they thought they did not share a hierarchy of values. Two significant issues were hotly disputed: literacy and numeracy, and secondly, spirit versus permissiveness. Philippa, Carol, and I, with no intention of starting our own school, became tangled up in the dispute of two of these schools. We had invested such hope, first in one school and then in the other. The same thing happened in both schools. Endless meetings were held. Parents argued vehemently about what they believed the best education would involve. We knew these schools were not for us, but what were we going to do now? Without there having been earlier reflection, one of us said, and we can't remember whom, let's start our own school. So we did. The seed that had been planted in me with the book The Naughtiest Girl in the School in the 50s finally germinated once its memory was awakened by the prevailing education climate of the 1970s. In 1976, Philippa O'Carroll and I started the Fitzroy Community School. We had learnt important lessons from the failed attempts of the two alternative schools in which we had enrolled our children. We understood that it was important to clearly state the fundamental beliefs that would be built into the structure of the school and its operation. Philip and I passionately believed in the importance of literacy and numeracy. We knew that these were survival skills in our era. As for spirit, I believed then, and I believe even more strongly today, that spirit, or what we might call enthusiasm or spark, is an essential element of a life well lived. Spirit, enthusiasm determine quality of life. When tiny tots arrive at school, they sparkle. How can we, teachers, keep that spark alive? I want to distinguish between spirit and permissiveness. Giving careful attention to the spirit of the child is not the same as permissiveness. In the 1960s and 1970s, when regard for the spirit of the child rightly came to the fore, some parents, child psychologists, and teachers misunderstood their role in child development. Through fear of crushing the child's spirit, parents and others failed to give boundaries to their children. Children interpret our placing boundaries on them as our care for them. Sensible boundaries provide security and teach good habits. The absence of boundaries is a breeding ground for insecurity and antisocial behaviour. An unsure teacher or an indulgent parent may tolerate disrespectful, insolent, selfish, complaining behaviour, but the wider world finds such behaviour unacceptable. It is important not to mislead the child about what is socially acceptable through fear of crushing their spirit. There are very hard spirit-crushing consequences for the young person later in life if we fail to do this. Our school motto is people before things. I want to talk now of the part community plays in this. Valuing people above material goods, even above high academic grades, is the cornerstone of our school. We called our school a community school deliberately because we believed that our motto, people before things, could be best lived out within community. We wanted to draw attention to the fact that cooperation among the students, the teachers, and the parents contributes significantly to holistic education success. You may have heard the expression that it takes a village to raise a child. Certainly in Australia, our small, separated, nuclear families are very far from the village communities of old. This, I believe, is something missing from the growing child. So at Fitzroy Community School, we wanted to build an environment that allowed for closer ties being established among those involved. We wanted to provide an environment in which all members took all other members seriously. We wanted to have an ongoing, loving community. Saint Augustine, who was a theologian and philosopher in the 5th century, defined community in its terms of its common object of love. I like this. Our common object of love is the children. A true community is made up of old and young, of males and females. We have as many male teachers as female teachers. Given that this reflects the world outside the school, this is an authentic environment for the developing children. Men are different from women. This is crucial knowledge for the developing child. Children are at a great advantage if they grow up with a mix of men and women, and if they are comfortable with the ways of both men and women. We are convinced that community contributes to the development of character in our learners. We ask the children and the staff and those involved in our community to ask themselves this question: is my group better today for having had me in it? By simply asking this question, students understand that their behaviour affects others. They understand that they have power and responsibility. Given responsibility, children and others rise to the occasion. In community, children feel secure. They feel they belong. They learn to interact with a variety of people. All are welcome here, old and young. This means that there is an acceptance of difference. Students come to realize that every single person has something to offer. This allows children to give their best without stark competitiveness. An interesting discovery for us is that the presence of a baby brings out the best in everybody. 7-year-olds discover that they have the ability to care and bring joy to a baby's life. Character is built on empowerment, a sense of agency. Working for the common good teaches responsibility. At Fitzroy Community School, the kitchen is the headquarters, just as it is in the family home. We strive to have an extended family feel. This is taking notice of the hidden curriculum. We have no staff room, no us and them exists. In such close-knit communal space, it's very easy to see how one's behaviour affects others. Students learn that the common good is the responsibility of all. Far from being chaotic, everyone learns to respect the individual space of others. We have found that when children feel secure and feel they belong, academic success follows. The mind is free to absorb facts. Our learners are free to think. Preparing and sharing food has always been central to the life of Fitzroy Community School. Sharing food is much more than gaining sustenance. Eating together, and as it were from the same pot, breeds a feeling of togetherness, of equality, of community. I've included a few words written by a recent visitor. And I quote, "An animated and rich discussion took place around the kitchen table at the Fitzroy Community School on May 27, in the midst of a communal lunch. Teachers, parents and students moved easily in and out, partaking of the delicious food prepared and joining in the discussion." Genuine community is hard come by. We fight to maintain it. To this end, we adapt special eating requirements in a matter-of-fact way. To take the words of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963, when he said, "I have a dream. My dream is of a world with no food differences to divide the population." Well, possibly I might have to wait for heaven. In summary, Fitzroy Community School is proud to be and works to continue to be a harmonious, genuine community of children, teachers, parents and well-wishers, all united in the single goal of raising young people well. And I'm sure that this is the goal of teachers attending today. A.S. Neal of Summerhill defines success as the ability to work joyfully and live positively. The qualities character, curiosity, and confidence are strengths that are intricately entwined, and Dr. Phillips supports my belief. Yes. Um, in his little book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, he says, um, he says that if he believes this, that if you think and if you're curious about the world and you go adventuring, the school of life, this is what he's on about, the school of life will teach you all you need to know. And he understood this both practically and morally. And he says, with your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not so good street. Now, he was realistic and he goes on to say, you'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. But then he advises just never forget to be dexterous and deaf and never mix up your left foot with, no, your right foot with your left. Dr. Seuss celebrated teachers who encourage their children to think. In line with Dr. Seuss, in my book, Fitzroy Community School, I state, our philosophy in 1976 was that school is life and life is school, and this belief holds today. The question, of course, for teachers who believe in this is how do we bring the necessary life experiences into our schools so that we are able to cultivate character, curiosity, and confidence in our learners? At Fitzroy Community School, we ensure that certain essentials are embedded in our curriculum. Community, well, I've talked about that. A sense of empowerment through gaining a voice, sport, camps, free time, and our academic curriculum with a strong emphasis on literature. Oops. So now I'd like to look at, in our curriculum, a sense of empowerment through gaining a voice. At Fitzroy Community School, oral English ranks high. We consider effective communication to be an essential life skill, and we do all within our power to have children develop it. Learning to speak clearly, confidently, and coherently, learning to listen respectfully and then formulate a response that will advance the dialogue, these are fundamental skills which are best developed during the formative primary years. Our curriculum includes debating, poetry recitation, oral book reports, and our school play, which takes place every year, where all students have a role. The older children all have spoken parts. Interestingly, even when you provide the same safe environment for all children, certain ones are readier than others to contribute their feelings, thoughts, and reflections to the group. If children have an anxiety about speaking to the group, we work to overcome it. The older a child is, the harder it is to break the non-speaking habit. To help the tongue-tied, I've developed activities. One of these I call passing the box. I begin by holding a little box in my hand. I say my name. I mention something that I like to do and something that I haven't done yet, but that I'd like to do and why. I then choose a child to pass the box to. This child must say their name and then my name. Repeat what I said I would like and what my wish is, and then they say something that they like to do and something they haven't done but would like to do and why. The speaker then chooses another child to pass the box to. The task for each child is to listen attentively, remember the previous speaker's likes and their wish, and then add their own. The virtue of this activity is that it has some structure which gives confidence, but it also allows the child to put some original input. Another confidence building activity is to randomly select a chosen number of class members for that day. Each selected child mentions something that has surprised them or amazed them about the world they live in. This activity has a dual purpose. As well as building the child's confidence to speak in public, it encourages them to be mindful, to reflect on the world in which they live. We take so much for granted each day. The sun rises and sets, the seasons change. In 2 or 3 years, babies develop language. At Fitzroy Community School, we want our students to embrace the world, free of blinkers. We want them to develop mindfulness and awe, to be aware of the gift that life brings. With a voice, one can participate in society. A voice makes us a member of a community. At Fitzroy Community School, we want our students to have a voice. No technique brings a quick fix to those who are shy of speaking publicly. However, we constantly strive by trial and error to empower children in communication confidence. So now let's have a look at sport within our Fitzroy Community School curriculum. Sport plays a significant role here. Competitive sports provide one of the few opportunities available to young people to learn many of life's important lessons. Through sport, children acquire both physical and emotional confidence. They learn to win and lose graciously. They learn teamwork. They learn to encourage other team members. They learn to remain positive and supportive when their teammates are not having a good day. Well, that is, they learn that morale is critical to outcome. They learn that good sportsmanship brings a sense of satisfaction. And finally, they learn that the umpire's decision is final and must be accepted in good spirit. Sportsmanship is essential in all areas of life, including relationships. Throughout our lives, we need to cooperate, to discipline our reactions, to cope with our emotions, and to treat others compassionately and fairly. Sport shows us that we can cope with bumps and losses and have the fortitude to gather ourselves together and continue and to do our best. Some children have a performance anxiety. Another valuable aspect of sports classes is that it can alert teacher to these fears. Children may claim to be sick or injured in order to take attention away from this fear. They may play the clown, focus on others' mistakes, invoke rules over others, and make agonizing excuses for making mistakes. Now, this problem is usually easier to identify than to solve, but we strive. Our immediate aim is to encourage the child simply to take pleasure from the activity, pleasure from being a team member, and pleasure from giving new things a go, to take the focus from winning. When all is well, children get pleasure from physical activity, especially when they improve or master a skill. Children feel good about themselves when they have body confidence, or when they have acted courageously, or when they experience the satisfaction of having displayed sportsmanship in a challenging situation. The wonderful thing is that success in this area usually brings success in other areas where there have been similar uh, performance anxieties. From the very beginning of our school in 1976, camps have been essential to the life of Fitzroy Community School right from the child's first year. Should anyone do a word search of the text of Fitzroy Community School, viable is one of the constantly recurring words. Viability is the student's emotional strength and flexibility to adjust and deal with new experiences. It's a positive attitude. Viability entails a belief in oneself and the courage to strive for the best way forward. It's the capacity to positively engage with any challenging, unknown situations that may arise. City living, with its super organized lifestyle, often deprives children of the opportunity to become self-managing, confident, responsible, and adaptable. For working parents having to arrive at a workplace at a particular time, or parents simply busy with other engagements, it's usually much easier if they do the little chores that children were once required to do, such as dressing oneself, finding a music book, helping with a younger one, walking or feeding the dog, and gathering plates for the sink or dishwasher. Further, today, many parents tend to be anxious about their child roaming beyond their home without supervision. Well, is there too much fear? It is important for parents and teachers to be able to distinguish between thoughtful carefulness and their own anxiety. I'm reminded of what A.S. Neal in his book Summerhill said, a parent's fear affords a poor prognosis for the emotional health of children. Many children are no longer expected to take responsibility for themselves, to develop an awareness of what's going on around them, to fend for themselves, to problem solve. I've no doubt that parents and teachers want children to be generous, aware of others, self-sufficient, responsible, reliable, problem-solving and brave. But the question is, how do we achieve this in our modern lifestyle? And is the way we are raising children undermining what we actually want for them? The Fitzroy Community School style of camp certainly assists in addressing this problem. We believe that it is important for the emotional well-being of children that they develop faith in themselves and faith in the wider world. It is important for them to know that they are ready and able to have their world expand beyond the nuclear family to a world that contains other trusted elders. The Fitzroy Community School camps have very little built-in structure. Our primary location is a 21-acre property 50 kilometres north of Melbourne. This is bushland. So, what do the children do on these unstructured camps? Well, firstly, they take in where they are. Wonderful for the development of curiosity and for exploratory adventures. The children invent things to do with what the area offers. This is a valuable life skill, to be at home in whatever situation you find yourself and to make that situation work for you. As well as this, It is important for these little city people to be at home in the bush. It is important for them to learn that they can have wonderful fun without city services. Fun without microwaves, washing machines, dishwashers, baths, hot water laid on, computers, computer games and television. So what do? They deepen friendships, they learn new ways to get on with others, and make friends with children they would not normally play with at school. They learn that they are indeed fine away from home and its normal supports. They learn to take mud and rough and tumble in their stride. They learn they can work out for themselves what to do. They experience the joy of sitting around a campfire and telling stories and singing. They learn that they are able to put their trust in caring elders other than their parents. They come home with a new confidence and a new adaptability. At Fitzroy Community School, we passionately want our children to find that the world is their oyster, to be at ease and find pleasure in all sorts of conditions, whether the conditions be that of a five-star hotel or of camping in the outback. And possibly something a little bit unusual and important in our curriculum is free time. One of the biggest faults in child raising today is that children are over-organized. They spend many hours of at school each day and are often rushed to a multiplicity of activities after school. No doubt, parents believe there is benefit in these activities, and perhaps there is some, but when a child is left without free time, at what cost is this? Children need free time to dream, to invent, to interact, to do what they want to do, not what others, even very well-meaning others, think they should want to do. They need space to think, space to discover themselves, space to discover their likes and dislikes, space to discover others' likes and dislikes. Children need the opportunity to learn to use leisure time. Children who are constantly organized become dependent on others to plan for them. Some children who are used to being tightly managed become anxious if an authority does not impose a structure on them. Others will claim to be bored should a parent or teacher fail to provide some activity. Some become disruptive. The long-term consequences of this overmanagement are bad for the child and bad for our future world. We are raising pawns, albeit accomplished pawns. Our world needs people who can think for themselves and organize themselves. It needs people who can discern for themselves what is right and wrong. It needs people of imagination. It needs people of spirit. We must be vigilant about safeguarding free time in our children's lives. Free time is important in the school timetable. In an exam-dominated society, this is not always easy, but it is essential. During free time, teachers have the opportunity to discover what the young person is like when not being told what to do by others. Children will only be superficially known if the relationship with them is limited to the classroom or to other structured activities. Children experiment with different ways of being. It is during free time that children experiment with behaviours that they have observed around them or via advertising or the media. Children depend on the significant elders in their lives to give them authentic feedback on the acceptability or otherwise of the attitudes and behaviours they are displaying. Through these exchanges, children discover and establish more successful relating habits. A respected voice added to the parent's voice can be a powerful positive influence. If free time rarely or never exists in children's lives, their character growth, their curiosity and inventiveness, their growth towards independence, self-knowledge, and self-management are stunted. And finally, academic excellence at Fitzroy Community School. When Filippo, Carol and I were involved in the education debates of the 1970s and enthusiastically enrolled our children in an alternative school, it came as an extraordinary surprise to us that there was a debate about whether we should teach literacy and numeracy explicitly. How, we wondered, were children to participate with confidence in today's society if they were illiterate and innumerate? Literacy and numeracy are the survival skills of our society. They are the equivalent of learning the skill of shooting a bow and arrow that a Native American child would have needed to learn a few hundred years ago. All through the ages, elders of societies have ensured that their young gain the skills to enable a fulfilling life. The stated fear of explicit teaching was that the spirit of the child would be crushed. Now, unless something has gone badly wrong, children want to be good at the things they see their society values. Good education will embrace more than literacy and numeracy, but literacy and numeracy as a very minimum must be firmly embedded in the curriculum. Excellent tools for imparting these survival skills must be available to the teacher. In starting Fitzroy Community School in the 70s, we encountered a problem. Literacy had been taken over by the whole word doctrine. To my bewilderment, no method for adequate reading and writing instruction existed, or no method that I could find, so we wrote our own. The Fitzroy method of the Fitzroy readers is a truly systematic synthetic phonic program which has now existed for over 50 or nearly 50 years and has been constantly classroom tested throughout that time. Now, if anyone's interested, I think up on my website, there is a 15-minute introduction to the Fitzroy method. Teaching can be defined in two ways. Good teaching will include both definitions. The most obvious definition of teaching is imparting knowledge to someone who is without that knowledge. For example, with beginners, the teacher will teach the names and the sounds of the letters of the alphabet, how to hold the pen, stroke order, etc. Once the sounds of the alphabet are known, the teacher reveals the magical fact that when we put sounds together, we make words. I love seeing the children's faces light up. You see that they have gained the secret of reading. They are empowered. They have the key to decoding the written word. They are on the road to great discovery. The second meaning of teaching comes from the Latin verb educere, which means draw out. Here, the teacher is paying tribute to the fact that humans have certain capacities that are innate. Intuition, emotion, empathy, appreciation of beauty, wonder, reflection, creativity. If these qualities are not acknowledged and not allowed expression, the growing child will become a stunted human being. To this end, literature holds a top place in the curriculum at Fitzroy Community School. Literature broadens the mind of the young. It is important that teachers select and explore the works of great writers. Literature gives students permission to feel, to make judgments about the world. It equips them to discover and express their own opinions. Literature awakens sensitivity, alertness, kindness, justice. It provides the pathway to empathy, the attribute which makes us truly human. Literature has enormous power to instruct. Within its works, thousands of situations can be prevented and vicariously experienced. The, the entire range of human emotions is experienced by the reader. This understanding of the world is essential for our young learners. Society generally turns a blind eye to the enormous power a teacher has to influence a developing child. But surely this is what makes teaching the top profession. We must always keep this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faye. The presentation was amazing, and I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience too. Even I have a lot of questions, not questions, but definitely I want to know more about these community schools. And we cannot cover maybe all the questions, but we can take up one as we are short on time. We wanted to know about assessment in community school, how we can assess learning which is will not put pressure on our learners.
Um, Assessment, of course, is very important. We the Fitzroy readers have built-in assessment as they go. You can see exactly where the child is at. Uh, and of course, we participate also in the national examinations at year 3, 5, 7, and 9 level. All children take a national test. Uh, it was very interesting. In the book Hooray for Different Doofer Day, you'll see where the children, he said that the Miss Bonkers said, we taught you how to think, but an exam comes and they've never done an exam, but their school finishes up getting the top marks. And it reminded me of a time when we usually get the top marks. We were amongst I think in our area, we were the top school. So I think if you've got a method, the methodology of the Fitzroy readers with the workbooks, the word skills, the assessment is almost built in, but we do actually have assessments on our website too. Assessment, of course, is important. You need to know that the children know what you want them to know.
Yes, I totally agree. Thank you so much for these insights. As someone is also saying in the chat box that it was truly an eye opener. Heartfelt thanks to Faye for this amazing session, and an applause to all for your thoughtful engagement. Next session will start at 12:30 p.m. with Mark. He's joining us from Thailand on what can you learn about yourself while using AI. So do join that session, everyone. Thank you so much again, Faye. Have a nice day.
Thank you very
Geeta, I
much.
have one thing to share.
Yeah.
Good morning, Faye.
Oh,
So,
hello, hello.
so I think these principles can be applied in an organization as well, like having a community kitchen, field trips, having camps. So I could relate this with my organization and doing this more often with the team and colleagues. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing.
Well, definitely, and I hope that some of the ideas do translate generally, and I think they do. For example, that morale is critical to success, things like that, and yes, and the love of exploring and making a situation work for you. Yes, so I'm sure in all organizations this will work very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.